The fever came with the blizzard, and Amanda Keller had never seen a man burn so hot while the world outside turned to ice. She had been hauling water from the well behind the boarding house when she heard the horse stumble into Las Animas, Colorado, its hooves clattering against the frozen Main Street. The animal was coated in snow and ice, its breath coming in ragged clouds, and the man slumped in the saddle looked more dead than alive. Amanda dropped her buckets and ran toward him just as he toppled sideways, crashing into the snow-covered street with a thud that made her heart lurch. "Help!" She called out, but the wind swallowed her voice. The blizzard had been raging for 2 days already, and most folks had barricaded themselves inside. The few buildings along Main Street were shuttered tight, smoke rising from their chimneys into the white fury above. She grabbed the man under his arms and tried to drag him, but he was solid muscle and dead weight. His hat had fallen off, revealing dark hair matted with sweat despite the freezing cold. His face was flushed an angry red, and when she pressed her hand to his forehead, she jerked back. He was burning up. Amanda looked around desperately. The boarding house where she worked was 50 yards away, but it might as well have been a mile. The man's horse had already wandered off, seeking shelter. She couldn't leave him here to freeze. Setting her jaw, she grabbed him again and pulled with all her strength, dragging him inch by inch through the snow. Her boots slipped on the ice. Her fingers went numb even through her gloves. But she kept pulling, kept moving, because that was what you did out here. You helped people or they died. It was that simple. By the time she got him up the boarding house steps, her back was screaming and her lungs burned from the cold air. She kicked the door open and dragged him into the front parlor, where the pot-bellied stove threw blessed heat into the room. Mrs. Henderson, the boarding house owner, came rushing from the kitchen. "Good Lord, Amanda, who is that?" "I don't know. Found him in the street. He's got a terrible fever." Mrs. Henderson pressed her lips together, but she was a practical woman. "Get him upstairs to the spare room. I will fetch water and rags." Between the two of them, they managed to get the stranger up the narrow staircase and into the small room at the back of the second floor. It was the coldest room in the house, farthest from the main stove, but Amanda quickly got the small fireplace going while Mrs. Henderson stripped off the man's snow-crusted coat and boots. His clothes beneath were soaked through with sweat and melted snow. "We need to get him out of these wet things," Mrs. Henderson said, her face flushed. "Amanda, you had best step out." "I will help," Amanda said firmly. "We cannot waste time with modesty. Look at him." The man was shaking now, his teeth chattering so hard she could hear them clicking together. His skin had gone from flushed to pale, and his breathing was shallow and rapid. Mrs. Henderson nodded once, and together they worked to remove his wet shirt and undershirt, replacing them with a dry nightshirt from the cupboard. His gun belt they set aside carefully, along with his leather vest and the rest of his belongings. In his shirt pocket, Amanda found a worn leather wallet containing a few bills and a single tintype photograph of a woman who might have been his mother. "Check for papers," Mrs. Henderson said, wringing out the wet clothes into a basin. Amanda found a crumpled letter in his vest pocket. The ink was smudged but readable. "It is addressed to Kenneth Stanton," she said, scanning the lines. "From someone named Thomas in Pueblo, it says he is sorry to hear about the ranch." "So he is a rancher," Mrs. Henderson murmured. "Or was." "Well, papers do not matter much if he does not survive the night. That fever is bad, Amanda. Real bad. They got him under the quilts, piling blankets on top until only his head showed." Amanda pulled a chair close to the bed and began wiping his face with a cool cloth while Mrs. Henderson brought up a pitcher of fresh water and a bottle of willow bark tincture from the kitchen. "Try to get some of this into him," the older woman said, measuring out a dose, And keep him cool. If that fever gets any higher, it will cook his brain. I will stay with him, Mrs. Henderson gave her a long look. This blizzard is not letting up. Could be days before Doc Miller can get here from town. You understand what you are taking on? Yes, madam. All right, then. I will bring you up supper and more water. Call if you need me. When Mrs. Henderson left, closing the door softly behind her, Amanda was alone with the stranger. She dipped her cloth in the cool water and carefully wiped his face, his neck, his arms. His muscles jumped under her touch, and he muttered something incomprehensible. Up close, she could see he was young, maybe 25 or 26. A scar cut through his left eyebrow, and his hands were calloused and rope-burned. A working man. A cowboy, by the look of him. Outside, the wind howled and threw snow against the window in angry bursts. The blizzard was getting worse, if such a thing was possible. Amanda settled into her chair and wrung out her cloth again. It was going to be a long night. The hours crawled past. The fever spiked higher, and Kenneth thrashed in the bed, throwing off blankets that Amanda patiently tucked back around him. He called out names she did not know, shouted warnings about stampeding cattle, begged someone named Henry not to go. His voice cracked with desperation and grief, and Amanda found herself murmuring soft reassurances even though she knew he could not hear her. "It is all right," she whispered, stroking the damp hair back from his forehead. "You are safe now. Just rest." Around midnight, she managed to get some of the willow bark tincture between his lips. He coughed and sputtered, but she was patient, waiting for him to swallow a bit at a time. When the dose was gone, she resumed her endless cycle of cool cloths and gentle touches, fighting the fever that wanted to claim him. Amanda had been working at the boarding house for 3 years, ever since her father died and left her with nothing but debts. She was 22 years old, plain and practical, with brown hair she kept in a simple bun and gray eyes that people said were her best feature. She had no prospects for marriage. The men in Las Animas wanted pretty girls who giggled and flirted, not sensible women who could calculate boarding house accounts and knew how to clean a chimney flue. She had made peace with her life. It was not exciting, but it was hers, and she was good at what she did. But sitting here in the firelight, watching this stranger fight for his life, Amanda felt something stir in her chest. A longing she had pushed down for so long she had almost forgotten it existed. What would it be like to have someone to care for? Not as a duty, not for wages, but because your heart demanded it. To love someone so much that their pain became your pain, their joy your joy. She shook her head at her own foolishness. The fever must be making her delirious. This man was a stranger. When he recovered, if he recovered, he would thank her politely and ride off to wherever he had been heading when the blizzard caught him. That was how these things worked. The night deepened. The fire burned low, and Amanda added more wood, grateful that Mrs. Henderson kept the box well stocked. Kenneth's fever raged on, and she fought it with everything she had, changing his sweat-soaked nightshirt twice, sponging him down with cool water until her arms ached. Sometime before dawn, she dozed off in her chair, her hand still clutching the damp cloth. She woke to Mrs. Henderson shaking her shoulder. Gray morning light filtered through the window, though it was hard to tell with the snow still falling thick and fast outside. "Go get some sleep in your own bed," Mrs. Henderson said gently. "I will watch him for a while." "No, I am fine," Amanda protested, but even as she spoke, she swayed on her feet. "You are dead on your feet, girl. Go on now. A few hours of proper sleep, then you can come back. He needs you strong, not collapsed on the floor." Reluctantly, Amanda agreed. She stumbled to her small room down the hall and fell onto her narrow bed without even removing her dress. Sleep claimed her immediately. When she woke, The light outside had changed to the peculiar brightness of afternoon during a snowstorm. She splashed water on her face from the basin, changed into a fresh dress, and hurried back to the sick room. Mrs. Henderson looked up from her knitting as Amanda entered. "He has been quiet," the older woman reported. "Fever is still high, but no higher than before. I got some water into him." "Thank you, I can take over now." Mrs. Henderson patted her hand as she stood. "You are a good girl, Amanda. This man is lucky you found him." Alone again with Kenneth, Amanda resumed her vigil. She talked to him as she worked, telling him about Las Animas and the boarding house, about the way the mountains looked in summer, and how the Arkansas River flooded every spring. She told him about her father, who had been a freight wagon driver before a heart attack took him on the road between Las Animas and Trinidad. She even told him about her mother, who she barely remembered, who had died of pneumonia when Amanda was 6. "So you see," she said softly, wringing out her cloth, "you have to fight this fever. Because I know what it is like to lose people, and I will not lose you too, not if I can help it." On the second day of the blizzard, the fever broke briefly. Kenneth's eyes fluttered open, unfocused and glassy. Amanda leaned forward. "Can you hear me? You are safe. You are in Las Animas at the Henderson boarding house." His lips moved. She brought a cup of water to his mouth and helped him drink. Most of it dribbled down his chin, but some went down his throat. His eyes tried to focus on her face. "Angel," he whispered, his voice like gravel. "No, just Amanda. You have been very sick. You need to rest." But he was already gone again, his eyes rolling back as unconsciousness reclaimed him. The fever spiked higher than ever, and Amanda worked frantically through the afternoon and evening, terrified that this time she would lose the battle. She prayed, though she had not prayed in years, bargaining with God in whispered promises if he would just let this cowboy live. Sometime after midnight on the third day, the fever broke for real. One moment Kenneth was burning under her hands, and the next his skin was merely warm. His breathing deepened and slowed, and when Amanda pressed her fingers to his neck, his pulse was strong and steady. "Thank God," she breathed, sagging back in her chair. Oh, thank God. She must have fallen asleep then, because the next thing she knew, pale morning light was streaming through the window and the wind had finally stopped its constant howling. The silence was almost shocking. Amanda sat up stiffly, her neck protesting, and looked at the bed. Kenneth was watching her. His eyes were clear now, a deep brown that reminded her of strong coffee. They were intelligent eyes, kind eyes, though shadowed with exhaustion. He studied her for a long moment before speaking. "You are real," he said, his voice hoarse but coherent. "I thought maybe I dreamed you." Amanda felt her cheeks flush. "I am real. How do you feel?" "Like I got trampled by a herd of longhorns." He tried to sit up and immediately fell back with a groan. "What happened? Where am I?" "You rode into Las Animas 3 days ago during the blizzard. You had a terrible fever. I found you in the street and brought you here to the boarding house." She poured fresh water into a cup. "Drink this slowly." He let her help him drink, though she could tell it cost his pride to accept the assistance. When the cup was empty, he lay back against the pillows and closed his eyes briefly. 3 days, he muttered. "I lost 3 days. You nearly lost your life." "What were you doing riding in a blizzard like that?" His jaw tightened. "Running from ghosts, I suppose. Stupid thing to do." Amanda wanted to ask what he meant, but Mrs. Henderson bustled in with a tray of broth and bread. "Well now, look who decided to join the living," the older woman said cheerfully. "You gave us quite a scare, young man. I am Mrs. Henderson, and this is my boarding house. You have been in my best spare room for 3 days while Miss Keller here nursed you through the worst fever I have seen in 10 years. Kenneth's eyes found Amanda again. "You took care of me. All 3 days. I helped, Amanda said, uncomfortable with the intensity of his gaze. Mrs. Henderson did too. I helped some, Mrs. Henderson corrected, but Amanda barely left your side. Now then, let us see if we can get some broth into you. You need to build your strength back up. Over the next hour, they coaxed half a bowl of broth and a few bites of bread into Kenneth. It exhausted him, and he was asleep again before they cleared away the tray. But it was natural sleep this time, not the fever-driven unconsciousness of before. Amanda felt hope unfurl in her chest like the first crocus of spring. The blizzard had passed, but the aftermath was severe. Snow was piled 5 feet high in places, and the cold was bitter and sharp. Doc Miller made it through on the 4th day, riding behind a snow plow wagon that had finally cleared Main Street. He examined Kenneth thoroughly while Amanda waited anxiously in the hallway. When the doctor emerged, he was shaking his head in amazement. That was one of the worst fevers I have encountered. If not for your nursing, Miss Keller, he would be dead, no question about it. You saved his life. Will he recover fully? Barring complications, yes, but it will take time. A fever like that takes a toll on the body. He needs rest, good food, and continued care. At least another week, maybe 2, before he should even think about traveling. He can stay here, Amanda said immediately, then flushed. I mean, if Mrs. Henderson agrees, of course. Doc Miller smiled. I am sure she will. You have done good work, Miss Keller. Your father would be proud. After the doctor left, Amanda returned to the sick room. Kenneth was awake, staring at the ceiling with an expression of such bleakness that it made her heart ache. The doctor says you will be fine, she said gently. But you need rest, I heard. He turned his head to look at her. He said you saved my life. I did what anyone would do, not anyone. Most folks would have left a stranger to freeze. His voice was quiet but fierce. You did not have to help me, but you did. Why? Amanda considered the question. Because you needed help and I could give it. It is not complicated. It should not be, but in my experience, people usually want something in return. I do not want anything. He studied her for a long moment, as if trying to read the truth in her face. Finally, he nodded. Thank you, Amanda Keller. I owe you a debt I can never repay. You do not owe me anything, just get well. Over the following days, Kenneth grew stronger. He graduated from broth to solid food, though his appetite was still poor. Amanda brought his meals and sat with him while he ate, and gradually he began to talk. She learned that he had owned a small ranch outside Pueblo with his brother Henry. A drought had killed most of their cattle, and then creditors had taken the land. Henry, unable to bear the loss, had ridden off one night and never come back. Kenneth had searched for weeks before giving up. He had been drifting south when the blizzard caught him, half mad with grief and not particularly caring if he lived or died. I was a fool, he said, staring into the fire. Running from the pain instead of facing it, Henry would have been ashamed of me. Grief makes us do strange things, Amanda said softly. You cannot judge yourself too harshly. I rode into a blizzard in the high country in December. That is not grief. That is giving up. But you did not give up. You kept riding. Part of you wanted to live, or you would not have made it as far as Las Animas. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. You are a wise woman, Amanda Keller. Not wise, just honest. As Kenneth recovered, Amanda found herself spending more and more time in his room. She told herself it was because he needed care, but that was only part of the truth. The real truth was that she enjoyed his company. He was intelligent and thoughtful, with a dry sense of humor that emerged as his strength returned. He asked her about her life, and actually listened to her answers as if her thoughts and opinions mattered. It was a novel experience. One evening, about 10 days after he had arrived, they sat by the fire while snow fell softly outside the window. Kenneth was finally allowed to sit in a chair for a few hours each day, though he still tired easily. Amanda was mending one of Mrs. Henderson's sheets, her needle flashing in the firelight. "You ever think about leaving Las Animas?" Kenneth asked suddenly. Amanda looked up in surprise. "Sometimes, but where would I go? I have no money, no family. This is my home." "Is it? Or is it just the place you ended up?" The question unsettled her. What is the difference? Home is where you choose to be, where your heart is, not just where circumstances strand you. And where is your home, Kenneth Stanton? His face darkened. "I do not have one anymore. It is gone." "So you are the same as me. Stranded by circumstances." "Maybe. Or maybe we are both free to choose something new." Amanda did not know what to say to that. She bent her head over her mending, but her hands were shaking slightly. The intimacy of the moment felt dangerous, like standing too close to a cliff edge. She was falling for this cowboy, she realized with a jolt of fear. Falling hard and fast, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Kenneth seemed to sense her discomfort because he changed the subject, asking about the history of Las Animas. Amanda was grateful for the reprieve, and they talked of safer things until Mrs. Henderson called her down to help with supper preparations. 2 weeks after Kenneth's arrival, he was well enough to come downstairs for meals. The boarding house had 4 other residents: an elderly prospector named Cyrus, 2 railroad workers named Frank and David, and a school teacher named Miss Patricia Worth. Kenneth was polite to all of them, but Amanda noticed he always positioned himself so he could see her, as if reassuring himself she was nearby. The railroad workers ribbed him good-naturedly about his adventure in the blizzard, but Kenneth did not laugh. "I was a damned fool," he said bluntly. "If not for Miss Keller, I would be frozen solid out on the prairie." "Well, you are a lucky man then," Frank said, grinning at Amanda. "She is the best nurse in Las Animas." "The only nurse in Las Animas," Amanda corrected, but she felt warmth spread through her at Kenneth's steady gaze. That night, as she was banking the parlor fire before bed, Kenneth appeared in the doorway. He had gained back some of the weight the fever had stripped from him, and his color was good now. He looked like a different man from the burning, delirious stranger she had dragged from the snow. "Amanda, can I talk to you?" Her heart sped up. "Of course." He came into the room, moving carefully as if still testing his strength. For a moment he just stood there, silhouetted against the lamplight from the hall, and Amanda was struck by how handsome he was. Not pretty boy handsome, but rugged and real, with character carved into every line of his face. "I have been thinking," he began, then stopped. Started again. "In a few days I will be well enough to leave. Doc Miller says I am healing fine." Amanda's throat tightened. She had known this was coming, but it still hurt. "That is good. You must be eager to move on." "That is just it. I am not." He took a step closer. "Amanda, these past 2 weeks with you have been the best weeks I have had in longer than I can remember. You saved my life, yes. But you did more than that. You reminded me that life is worth living, that there is still good in this world, that I have something to live for." "Kenneth, please let me finish. I know I do not have much to offer. I lost my ranch, my brother is gone, and I am basically a drifter with nothing but a horse and a gun to my name. But I am a hard worker and I learn fast. I could find work here in Las Animas. The railroad is hiring, or maybe one of the local ranches needs hands come spring." Amanda's heart was pounding so hard she could barely hear her own thoughts. "What are you saying?" "I am saying I do not want to leave, not if it means leaving you." He reached out and took her hand, his calloused palm warm against hers. "I am saying that somewhere in the middle of that fever, while you were taking care of me, telling me stories, fighting to keep me alive, I fell in love with you. And I know it is fast, and I know I have no right, but I cannot leave without telling you the truth." "You are the most extraordinary woman I have ever met, Amanda Keller. You are brave and kind and strong, and I would count myself the luckiest man alive if you would let me stay, if you would let me court you proper and see where this goes." For a moment, Amanda could not speak. Her mind reeled. Love. Was that what this feeling was, this warmth and longing and desperate hope? She had thought herself resigned to spinsterhood, to a life of service and practicality. But Kenneth was offering her something different, a chance at the kind of life she had only read about in books. "I am not extraordinary," she finally managed. "I am just a boarding house worker with no prospects. You are wrong." His grip on her hand tightened. "You are everything. At least you are everything to me. But if you do not feel the same, I understand. I will leave and I will not trouble you again. I just needed you to know." Amanda looked up into his earnest brown eyes and felt something break open inside her. All the walls she had built around her heart, all the careful resignation, crumbled away. "I feel the same," she whispered. "I did not want to. I told myself you would leave and I would just be hurt, but I could not help it. I fell in love with you too, Kenneth." His face transformed. The bleakness that had haunted his expression since he woke vanished, replaced by pure joy. "You mean it, truly, truly." He pulled her close then, wrapping his arms around her in a hug that felt like coming home. Amanda pressed her face against his chest and heard his heart beating strong and steady, the heart she had fought so hard to keep beating. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other, and Amanda felt something settle inside her. This was right. This was real. When they finally pulled apart, Kenneth was grinning like a boy at Christmas. "So I can stay. You will let me court you." "Yes, you fool, you can stay. I will get a job. I will work hard. I will prove I am worthy of you." "You already are," Amanda said softly. "You already are." They talked late into the night, making plans. Kenneth would speak to the railroad bosses about work. Amanda would continue at the boarding house for now, though they both dreamed of the day when he might save enough for them to start a small ranch again. It would take time, but they had time now. They had survived the blizzard and the fever. They could survive anything. When Amanda finally climbed the stairs to her own room, the sky outside was beginning to lighten with the first hint of dawn. She was exhausted, but happier than she had been in years. She fell into bed and slept deeply, dreaming of brown eyes and strong arms and a future that suddenly seemed full of possibility. Kenneth did get a job with the railroad, working as a track inspector. It was hard physical labor, checking the rails for damage and clearing snow and debris, but he never complained. He came back to the boarding house each evening covered in dirt and sweat, but always with a smile for Amanda. He would clean up at the pump out back, then join her in the parlor where they would sit together by the fire, talking or reading or just enjoying each other's company. Their courtship became the talk of Las Animas. People whispered about the cowboy Amanda Keller had saved from the blizzard, about how he had stayed and gotten an honest job, about the way they looked at each other like nothing else in the world existed. Some said Amanda had worked a spell to keep him. Others said Kenneth was just grateful and would leave once the debt wore off, but Mrs. Henderson, who saw them together every day, knew better. "That is real love," she told Cyrus one evening as they watched Kenneth help Amanda fold laundry, "the kind that lasts." Spring came eventually, as it always did in Colorado. The snow melted away, revealing brown grass and muddy streets and the first green shoots pushing up through the earth. The Arkansas River swelled with runoff, and wildflowers began to dot the hillsides. Kenneth had been in Las Animas for 4 months, and his job with the railroad had become permanent. He was good at the work, reliable and strong, and the bosses appreciated his dedication. On a warm April evening, Kenneth took Amanda for a walk along the river. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, and the air smelled of sage and new grass. They walked hand in hand, comfortable in the silence, until Kenneth stopped at a bend in the river where cottonwood trees grew thick along the bank. "Amanda, I need to ask you something." She looked up at him, her heart already knowing what was coming. "Yes." Kenneth dropped to one knee, pulling a small box from his pocket. When he opened it, a simple gold band gleamed in the fading light. "I know I am not rich, and I cannot give you a fancy house or a life of ease. But I love you more than I thought it was possible to love another person. You saved my life, but more than that, you gave me a reason to live again. Will you marry me, Amanda? Will you be my wife?" Tears blurred her vision. "Yes. Yes, of course, yes." He stood and slipped the ring on her finger, and then he kissed her for the first time. It was gentle and sweet and full of promise, and Amanda felt like her heart would burst with happiness. This man, this wonderful man who had ridden into her life on the wings of a blizzard, wanted to spend forever with her. It was more than she had ever dared to hope for. They were married 6 weeks later in the small church at the edge of town. Mrs. Henderson stood up with Amanda, and one of Kenneth's co-workers from the railroad stood with him. The ceremony was simple but beautiful, and when the preacher pronounced them man and wife, Kenneth kissed Amanda like she was the most precious thing in the world. The small congregation applauded, and Amanda laughed through her happy tears. Mrs. Henderson let them have the spare room where Kenneth had been sick as their own, at least until they could afford something better. Amanda continued to work at the boarding house, though now she did so as Kenneth's wife, not just an employee. The distinction filled her with quiet pride. She belonged to someone now. She had family again. Their first year of marriage was not easy. Money was tight, and there were times when they barely scraped by. But they were happy. Kenneth would come home exhausted from long days on the rails, and Amanda would have hot food and a warm smile waiting for him. They would eat together at the small table in their room, sharing stories about their days, planning and dreaming about the future. On Sunday afternoons, they would ride Kenneth's horse, which he had finally recovered from the livery where it had taken shelter during the blizzard, out into the prairie. Just the two of them and the wide open sky. Late at night, lying in each other's arms, they would talk about the week Kenneth had spent in the grip of the fever. He confessed that he had vague memories of her voice, soothing and constant, calling him back from the darkness. He remembered thinking she was an angel, sent to guide him either to death or back to life. He had chosen life because of her. "I wanted to know who you were," he told her, tracing patterns on her shoulder in the darkness. "I could not die without knowing." "I am so glad you chose to come back," Amanda whispered. "I do not know what I would have done if I had lost you. You never will. I am here for always. I promise you that." By their second winter together, Kenneth had saved enough money to put a down payment on a small piece of land outside Las Animas. It was not much, just 20 acres with a run-down cabin, but it was theirs. They moved out of the boarding house with Mrs. Henderson's tearful blessing and began the hard work of building a life. Kenneth fixed up the cabin while Amanda planted a garden. They bought 3 milk cows and a dozen chickens. It was back-breaking work, but they did it together, side by side, and somehow that made even the hardest days bearable. At night, they would fall into bed exhausted but content, knowing they were building something real and lasting. In the spring of their 3rd year together, Amanda realized she was pregnant. She told Kenneth on a sunny afternoon while they were mending fence posts, and he whooped with joy, picking her up and spinning her around until she was dizzy and laughing. "We are going to be parents," he said, his eyes bright with tears. "Amanda, we are going to have a baby. We are. Are you ready? With you, I am ready for anything." Their son was born on a cold December night, exactly 3 years to the day after Kenneth had ridden into Las Animas during the blizzard. Doc Miller delivered the baby in the same cabin bedroom where Kenneth and Amanda slept, and when the doctor placed the squalling infant in Kenneth's arms, the tough cowboy broke down and cried. "He is perfect," Kenneth said, gazing down at his son with wonder. "He is absolutely perfect." They named him Henry, after Kenneth's lost brother. It felt right, like a way of honoring the past while embracing the future. Little Henry was a strong baby with his father's dark hair and his mother's gray eyes, and from the moment he drew his first breath, he owned both their hearts completely. The years rolled by, marked by the rhythms of ranch life. There were hard times, a dry summer that nearly killed their crops, a winter when sickness swept through the cattle, a spring flood that washed out their fences. But there were far more good times. Watching Henry take his first steps, celebrating their 5th anniversary with a dance in the barn, adding on to the cabin when Amanda became pregnant again, this time with a daughter they named Rose. Kenneth proved to be as devoted a father as he was a husband. He taught Henry to ride and rope, told his children stories about the old days, played with them in the creek on hot summer afternoons. But he never forgot that Amanda was the foundation of everything. He told her he loved her every single day, and he showed it in countless small ways, bringing her wildflowers from the meadow, taking over her chores when she was tired, dancing with her in the kitchen while the children giggled. On their 10th anniversary, Kenneth gave Amanda a locket. Inside was a small photograph of the two of them on their wedding day, along with a lock of hair from each of their children. "So you can always carry us with you," he said, fastening it around her neck. "Though I suppose you do not need a reminder. You are stuck with us." "I would not have it any other way," Amanda said, touching the locket. "You are my whole world, Kenneth Stanton. You and Henry and Rose. You are everything I never knew I needed." "You saved me," Kenneth said quietly. "In every way a person can be saved. I was lost and dying, and you brought me back. You gave me a reason to live, and then you gave me a life worth living. I will never stop being grateful for that blizzard, as strange as that sounds. I am grateful too, though I wish you had not nearly died. Worth it, if it meant finding you." They stood together on the porch of their cabin, watching the sun set over the prairie. Henry and Rose were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. The cattle were lowing in the distance, and smoke rose from the chimney into the purpling sky. It was a simple life, but it was theirs, built on love and sacrifice and the stubborn determination to survive. Amanda thought back to that terrible December week 10 years ago, when she had fought death for a stranger's life. She had not known then that she was fighting for her own future, for the man who would become her husband and the father of her children. She had just known that she could not let him die, that some part of her had recognized him even then as essential, as meant to be. "What are you thinking about?" Kenneth asked, slipping his arm around her waist. "About the blizzard. About how you asked me to stay with you when you woke up. Do you remember that?" Kenneth smiled. "I remember thinking you were the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. I remember being terrified you would leave and I would never see you again, so I asked you to stay. You said stay always. Did I? I do not remember the exact words, I just remember the feeling. Like I had found something I had been searching for my whole life without even knowing I was searching. Like I was finally home." Amanda leaned her head on his shoulder. "You are home. We both are." As the years continued to pass, the Stanton ranch grew and prospered. They added more cattle, more land, built a proper barn and a new bedroom for the children. Henry grew into a tall, serious boy who loved the ranch as much as his father did. Rose was spirited and adventurous, always getting into mischief but impossible not to adore. And in time, there were more children. Another son they named Thomas, and finally a second daughter they called Catherine. Through it all, Kenneth and Amanda's love only deepened. They knew each other's moods and thoughts, could communicate with just a glance across a crowded room. They argued sometimes, as all couples do, but they always made up before the sun set, remembering how precious and fragile life could be. They had both come too close to losing everything to waste time on petty grudges. The people of Las Animas considered them a model couple. At church socials and town gatherings, folks would point them out to newcomers as proof that true love really existed. Young couples would ask Amanda for advice, and she always gave the same answer. Choose someone who makes you want to be better. Someone who will fight for you when you cannot fight for yourself, and then fight for them just as hard. Mrs. Henderson, who had grown old and gray, would nod approvingly when she saw them together. "I knew it from the first," she would say to anyone who would listen. "The moment that girl dragged that cowboy in from the snow, I knew they were meant to be." When Kenneth turned 40, he organized a surprise party for Amanda's 40th birthday. He invited everyone they knew to the ranch, friends from town, neighboring ranchers, old railroad workers, even Doc Miller, who was ancient now but still sharp as a tack. It was a beautiful summer evening, and they set up tables in the yard and roasted a pig and danced under the stars. At one point in the evening, Kenneth stood up and clinked his glass for attention. The crowd quieted, turning to face him. "I want to say something," Kenneth began, looking nervous despite the friendly audience. 20 years ago, I rode into Las Animas during the worst blizzard this territory had seen in decades. I was sick and half frozen, and I was ready to die. I did not much care about living anymore. But then this woman, he gestured to Amanda, who was blushing furiously. She saved me. She dragged me off the street and spent a week fighting for my life, even though I was a complete stranger. She did not have to do that, but she did it anyway because that is who Amanda is. That is who she has always been. He paused, emotion thickening his voice. And then, when I woke up and saw her sitting beside my bed, I knew. I knew with absolute certainty that I had found the person I was meant to spend my life with. So I asked her to stay, and miracle of miracles, she said yes. The crowd laughed and applauded. Kenneth waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "These 20 years with Amanda have been the greatest blessing of my life. She gave me back my will to live, and then she gave me a life more wonderful than I ever imagined. She gave me 4 incredible children, a home, a purpose. She gave me everything. So tonight, I want everyone here to know how lucky I am, how grateful I am, and how much I love this woman. Amanda Keller Stanton, you are the best thing that ever happened to me, and I will spend the rest of my life trying to deserve you." Amanda was crying now, not even trying to hide her tears. She stood and went to Kenneth, and they embraced while their friends and family cheered. When they finally pulled apart, Amanda spoke, her voice carrying clear in the summer night. "I think you have it backwards, Kenneth Stanton. You are the blessing. You came into my life when I thought I had resigned myself to being alone forever. You showed me what love really means, not just romance, but partnership, respect, choosing each other every single day, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. You made me a wife, a mother, a ranch owner. You made me happy, and I would do it all again in a heartbeat, even the week of nursing you through that terrible fever." "Even that?" Kenneth asked with a smile. "Even that, because it led to this, to us, to everything we have built together." They kissed, and their children made exaggerated gagging noises, which made everyone laugh. The party continued late into the night, full of music and laughter and joy. It was a perfect evening, a celebration of 2 decades of marriage and love and partnership. As Kenneth and Amanda lay in bed that night, exhausted but happy, Kenneth said, "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if that blizzard had not hit? If I had not gotten sick? Would we still have found each other?" Amanda considered the question seriously. "I do not know. Maybe we would have passed each other on the street one day and felt something. Or maybe you would have ridden right through Las Animas and we never would have met. But I like to think we would have found each other somehow. Some things are just meant to be. I believe that too." "You are my destiny, Amanda. The fever and the blizzard just helped me find you a little faster." More years passed. Henry got married to a sweet girl from town and started his own small ranch on the western edge of the Stanton property. Rose surprised everyone by becoming a schoolteacher, the same job Miss Worth had held all those years ago at the boarding house. Thomas followed his father into ranching, taking over more and more of the daily operations as Kenneth's hair turned gray and his joints started to ache on cold mornings. Catherine, the baby, was still finding her way, but she had a good heart and a strong spirit. Kenneth and Amanda grew old together, their faces weathering like the wood of their cabin, their hands becoming gnarled and spotted. But their love remained constant, a steady flame that warmed them through life's inevitable winters. They still danced in the kitchen when rain kept them inside. They still held hands when they sat on the porch in the evenings. They still said, "I love you," every single day. On the 30th anniversary of the blizzard that had brought them together, a late December snow began to fall over Las Animas. It was not a violent storm like that long-ago blizzard, just a gentle snow that made the world soft and quiet. Kenneth and Amanda sat together in front of the fire in their parlor, watching the flakes drift past the window. 30 years, Kenneth mused. Hard to believe it has been that long. "The best 30 years of my life," Amanda said, squeezing his hand. "Mine too. You know, I still remember waking up that last time after the fever broke. I remember opening my eyes and seeing you there and thinking you were the most beautiful thing in creation. I still think that, by the way." Amanda laughed. "You are a terrible liar, Kenneth Stanton. I am old and gray now." "So am I, but you are still beautiful to me. You always will be." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire burn low. Then Kenneth said quietly, "I want you to know something. If I had died that week, it would have been all right. I was ready to let go. But then I heard your voice calling me back. You would not let me quit. You fought for me when I did not have the strength to fight for myself. That is what love is, Amanda. That is what you taught me. Love is not just the easy times. It is fighting for each other through the hard times. It is refusing to give up even when everything seems hopeless." "You would have done the same for me," Amanda said. I will, always." The snow continued to fall, blanketing the ranch in white. Inside, the fire crackled and the old couple sat close together, drawing warmth from each other and from the memories of a lifetime shared. Outside, the wind whispered through the bare cottonwood trees, carrying with it the promise of spring to come, of new beginnings rising from frozen ground. But that was for tomorrow. Tonight was for remembering, for honoring the blizzard and the fever and the brave young woman who had refused to let a stranger die in the cold, for celebrating the love that had grown from that desperate week, love that had sustained them through 3 decades of joy and sorrow, triumph and loss, always together. Kenneth lifted Amanda's hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Thank you," he said, "for everything, for saving me, for loving me, for choosing to stay always." "Always," Amanda agreed, resting her head on his shoulder. "Always and forever." The fire burned down to embers, the snow piled higher outside. And in the warm glow of the parlor, Kenneth and Amanda Stanton held each other close. Two souls who had found their home in each other's arms, bound together by the blizzard that had nearly taken everything, but instead had given them the world. As the years rolled deeper into their shared life, the Stanton family became a cornerstone of the Las Animas community. Their ranch had grown into one of the most successful in the county, not because they were wealthy or ambitious, but because they treated their land, their animals, and their neighbors with respect and care. People knew that if you needed help, the Stantons would be there. It was a legacy Kenneth and Amanda built deliberately, remembering all too well what it meant to be lost and in need of kindness. Henry's ranch prospered as well, and he and his wife blessed Kenneth and Amanda with 3 grandchildren who would come running whenever they visited, clamoring for grandfather Kenneth's stories and grandmother Amanda's cookies. Rose, though she never married, was beloved by her students and found deep satisfaction in shaping young minds. She would bring her favorite pupils out to the ranch for special lessons about prairie ecology and frontier history, and Kenneth would delight in answering their questions about the old days. Thomas married a rancher's daughter from up near Pueblo, and the young couple worked side by side with Kenneth and Amanda, learning not just the practical aspects of ranching but the philosophy behind it. "The land does not belong to us," Kenneth would tell his son. "We belong to it. We are just caretakers for a little while. Our job is to leave it better than we found it." Catherine, the youngest, had inherited her mother's practical nature and her father's determination. She surprised everyone by deciding to become a nurse, inspired by the stories she had heard all her life about how her mother had saved her father during the blizzard. She studied in Denver and then returned to Las Animas, where she worked alongside the aging Doc Miller, bringing modern medical knowledge to the small frontier town. "I want to help people the way Mama helped Papa," she explained to her parents one evening. "I want to be the person who refuses to give up, who fights for life even when it seems hopeless." Amanda had cried when Catherine told them this, overwhelmed by pride and love. To know that her actions 30-some years ago had inspired her own daughter to dedicate her life to healing, it felt like a completion of some cosmic circle she had not even known existed. Kenneth was enormously proud as well. "You come from good stock on both sides," he told Catherine, pulling her into a hug. "Your mother is the bravest person I have ever known. If you are half the nurse she was, you will save a lot of lives." As Kenneth entered his 60s, the hard years of ranch work began to take their toll. His back ached constantly, and arthritis made his hands stiff on cold mornings. He could no longer do the heavy physical labor he once had, and though it frustrated him, he was philosophical about it. "We all slow down eventually," he told Amanda one morning as she helped him button his shirt, his fingers too stiff to manage the task. "At least I made it this far. There was a time I did not think I would see 30, let alone 65. "You are not done yet," Amanda said firmly. "You have years left in you, Kenneth Stanton." "I hope so. I'm not ready to leave you yet. But time is relentless, and no amount of love can stop its march." Kenneth's health continued to decline slowly but steadily. He developed a persistent cough that Doc Miller could not quite cure. He lost weight and his famous strength ebbed away like water through cupped hands. But through it all, his spirit remained strong. He still smiled when Amanda entered a room. He still told stories to his grandchildren. He still said, "I love you," every single day. Amanda watched her husband's decline with a breaking heart, but she refused to despair. If Kenneth could face his mortality with grace and courage, then she would be strong for him. She nursed him through bad days and celebrated good days. She held him when he was frightened and laughed with him when he felt well. She did for him what he would have done for her. She fought for every moment they had left together. On a cold morning in late January, 42 years after the blizzard that had brought them together, Kenneth woke in terrible pain. His breathing was labored, and his lips had a blue tinge that terrified Amanda. She sent Thomas racing to town for Catherine and Doc Miller while she did everything she could to make Kenneth comfortable. When Catherine arrived, she examined her father with professional efficiency, though tears streamed down her face. Finally, she pulled Amanda aside. "Mama, his heart is giving out. There is nothing I can do. I am so sorry." Amanda nodded, having already known but needed to hear it confirmed. "How long?" "Hours, maybe a day or two at most. He is not in pain now. I gave him something for that. You should be with him." Amanda returned to Kenneth's bedside and took his hand. His eyes opened, unfocused at first, but then finding her face and sharpening with recognition. A small smile curved his lips. "There you are," he whispered. "My angel, I am here. I am right here. Good." Did not want to go without saying goodbye. "You are not going anywhere," Amanda said fiercely, even though she knew it was a lie. "You are staying with me, Amanda." Kenneth's voice was gentle. "We both know that is not true. It is my time, but I am not afraid." I am terrified. I do not know how to be in this world without you. You will be fine. You are the strongest person I know. You saved me once, remember? When I was too weak to save myself. You pulled me back from death. You gave me 42 years I never would have had. Those were the best years of my life, Amanda. Every single day with you was a gift." Amanda was crying now, unable to hold back the tears. "It is not enough. I need more time. I need you." "I know, I need you too, but we do not always get what we need. We get what we are given and we make the best of it." He paused, breathing hard. "I want you to know something. That week when I was sick during the blizzard, I remember it. Not all of it, but pieces. I remember your voice. You talked to me constantly, told me stories, begged me to keep fighting. You said you would not let me die. Do you remember that?" "Yes, I remember. You kept your promise. You did not let me die. You brought me back. And then you gave me a life more wonderful than I ever imagined possible. You gave me love, family, purpose, home. Everything I have, everything I am, I owe to you. So I need you to listen carefully, Amanda Keller Stanton. Are you listening?" "Yes," Amanda sobbed. "I love you. I have loved you from the moment I opened my eyes and saw you sitting beside my bed. I will love you until my last breath, and if there is anything beyond this life, I will love you there too. You are my heart, my home, my everything. And I do not regret a single moment we had together. Not one. Do you understand?" "I understand." "Good. Now I need you to promise me something. Promise me you will not give up after I am gone. Promise me you will keep living, keep loving our children and grandchildren. Keep running the ranch. Keep being the amazing woman you are. Promise me, Amanda." "I promise. But Kenneth, I cannot do this without you." "Yes, you can. You are the woman who saved a dying cowboy in the middle of a blizzard. You can do anything." He smiled, though it clearly cost him effort. "Besides, you will not be without me. Not really. I will be in every sunset over the prairie, every wind through the cottonwoods, every spring bloom and summer rain. I will be there, Amanda. Always." By evening, the family had gathered. Henry and Rose and Thomas and Catherine stood around their father's bed with their spouses and children, saying quiet goodbyes. Kenneth spoke to each of them, offering words of love and wisdom, extracting promises that they would take care of their mother. The grandchildren, some too young to really understand, kissed their grandfather's weathered cheek and whispered that they loved him. When they were alone again, just Kenneth and Amanda in the room where they had shared 42 years of marriage, Kenneth pulled her close. His strength was almost gone, but his love burned as bright as ever. "Thank you," he whispered, "for staying, for always." Always, Amanda agreed, her tears falling onto his chest. I will love you always, Kenneth Stanton. He smiled then, a beautiful, peaceful smile, and closed his eyes. His breathing slowed, and then, so gently it was almost like falling asleep, he was gone. Amanda held him for a long time after, rocking slightly, keening her grief into the growing darkness. She had known this day would come eventually, but knowing and experiencing were two different things. The pain was immense, a physical ache in her chest that made breathing difficult. Her beloved husband, the man who had ridden into her life on the wings of a blizzard and changed everything, was gone. But even in her grief, Amanda remembered her promise. She would not give up. She would keep living, keep honoring the incredible gift Kenneth had given her by fighting to survive that terrible fever all those years ago. She would be strong, the way he had always believed she was. The funeral was held on a clear, cold morning. It seemed like all of Los Animas turned out to pay their respects to Kenneth Stanton, the cowboy who had nearly died in a blizzard, and then went on to build a good life and a strong family. People shared stories about his kindness, his work ethic, his devotion to Amanda. Old-timers who remembered the blizzard week talked about how it was the greatest love story Los Animas had ever seen. She saved him, and then he saved her right back, one old rancher said. That is how marriage should be, taking turns being strong for each other. Amanda stood at the graveside and watched them lower Kenneth into the earth, feeling hollowed out and ancient. But she did not break. She stood straight and tall. Her children and grandchildren gathered around her, drawing strength from their presence the way Kenneth had once drawn strength from her voice calling him back from death. In the days and weeks that followed, Amanda learned to navigate a world without Kenneth. It was harder than anything she had ever done, harder even than that exhausting week when she had fought the fever. But she did it. She got up every morning. She ran the ranch with Thomas's help. She played with her grandchildren. She went to church on Sundays and helped her neighbors when they needed it. She lived because she had promised Kenneth she would. At night, alone in the bed they had shared for so many years, Amanda would talk to Kenneth as if he could hear her. She told him about her day, about the children and the ranch, about how much she missed him. And sometimes, in the whisper of wind through the open window or the creak of the old house settling, she felt like he was answering, like he was keeping his promise to always be there. Spring came again to Los Animas. The snow melted and the prairie burst into bloom and life renewed itself the way it always did. Amanda planted her garden, the same garden she had planted for 42 years, and found a strange peace in the familiar rhythm of the work. Kenneth was gone, but the life they had built together remained. That was something worth holding on to. One warm afternoon in May, Amanda was sitting on the porch watching her youngest grandchildren play in the yard when Catherine came to visit. Her daughter sat down beside her and took her hand. "How are you doing, Mama?" "Really?" Amanda considered the question. "I miss him terribly. Every moment of every day, but I am all right. I have all of you, and I have the ranch, and I have 42 years of beautiful memories. Your father gave me so much, Catherine, so very much. I could never regret a moment of it, even though losing him hurts more than I can say. He loved you so much. We all saw it. Everyone saw it. I know, and I loved him just as much. That is the blessing and the curse. The depth of love determines the depth of grief, but I would not trade it. I would rather have this pain and all those years with Kenneth than never have known him at all." Catherine squeezed her mother's hand. "He was so proud of you. Did you know that? He used to tell me all the time. He would say, 'Your mother is the strongest woman in the world.' She saved my life, and then she made my life worth saving." Amanda's eyes filled with tears, but they were good tears, healing tears. "He saved me too. People think I was the hero of the story because I nursed him through the fever, but the truth is we saved each other. I was so lonely before he came. I had resigned myself to a half-life. And then this cowboy rode into town, nearly dead but still fighting, and he showed me what it meant to really live. To love with everything you have. To build something beautiful out of nothing but determination and faith. He gave me that gift. So yes, I am grieving, but I am also grateful for every single day we had together. Mother and daughter sat together in comfortable silence, watching the children play and the sun move across the sky. Life went on as it always did. The world kept turning. And Amanda Stanton, the woman who had once saved a dying cowboy in a blizzard and then spent 42 years loving him, found that she could still appreciate the beauty in it. The pain was real, but so was the joy. The grief was profound, but so was the gratitude. In the years that followed Kenneth's death, Amanda became the matriarch of the Stanton clan. She lived to see her grandchildren grow up and have children of their own. She saw the ranch prosper and grow, saw her children build good lives and strong families. She aged gracefully, her hair turning white and her face becoming lined with the map of a life fully lived. She never remarried. People asked occasionally, especially in the first few years after Kenneth's death, but Amanda always declined gently. "I had my great love," she would say. "Some people never get that. I was blessed to have 42 years of it. I do not need anything else." On winter nights when the wind howled and snow piled high around the ranch house, Amanda would think about that long-ago blizzard week. She would remember the terror of finding Kenneth nearly frozen in the street, the desperate fight to keep him alive, the profound relief when his fever finally broke. She would remember the way he looked at her when he first woke, like she was the answer to every question he had ever asked. She would remember falling in love with him slowly and then all at once, the way he had asked her to stay, the life they had built together. And she would smile because even though Kenneth was gone, even though she missed him with an ache that never quite faded, she had no regrets. Their love story had been real and deep and true. It had transformed both of them, given them purpose and joy, and a family that would carry their legacy forward long after they were both dust. Amanda Keller Stanton lived to be 86 years old. She remained sharp and engaged until the very end, still managing ranch affairs with her children, still spoiling her great-grandchildren, still telling the story of the blizzard week to anyone who would listen. She wanted people to know, wanted them to understand what love really meant. Not the romantic fantasy of novels, but the real, hard, beautiful work of choosing someone every day, of fighting for them when they could not fight for themselves, of building a life together one day at a time. On a quiet spring morning, Amanda died peacefully in her sleep. Her children found her in the morning, lying in the bed she had once shared with Kenneth, a small smile on her face. On the nightstand beside her was the locket Kenneth had given her on their 10th anniversary, the one containing pictures of them all. She had worn it every day for the rest of her life. They buried her beside Kenneth in the Los Animas cemetery, under a spreading cottonwood tree. The headstone read, "Amanda Keller Stanton, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, she fought for life and won at the funeral." Amanda's great-grandson, who was studying to be a writer, spoke about his great-grandparents' love story. He told the gathered crowd about the blizzard and the fever, about the week a brave young woman refused to let a stranger die, about how that act of compassion had bloomed into one of the great love stories of their family's history. "Great-grandmother Amanda used to tell me that love was a choice," he said, his voice carrying over the cemetery. "She said you choose to love someone not once but over and over again, every single day, when times are hard and when times are easy, when they are strong and when they are weak. She chose to fight for great-grandfather Kenneth during that blizzard week, and then she chose him every day for 42 years. And he chose her right back. That is their legacy to all of us. Not the ranch or the money or even the family, though those things matter. Their real legacy is showing us what it means to love someone completely, to fight for them, to never give up. The funeral ended with the singing of an old hymn that Amanda had loved. As the last notes faded into the spring air, her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren gathered around the grave, sharing memories and stories, laughing and crying together. The Stanton family was strong and large and loving, built on the foundation that Kenneth and Amanda had laid so many years ago. And if you listened carefully, if you let yourself be still and quiet, you might have heard it, the whisper of wind through the cottonwood leaves, carrying with it the echo of two voices forever intertwined. "Stay always," one voice said. "Always," the other replied. The blizzard that had nearly killed Kenneth Stanton had instead given him life, not just in the physical sense, though Amanda had certainly saved his body during that terrible fever week, but in the deeper sense of giving him a reason to live, a purpose, a love that made every hardship worth enduring. And Amanda, who had thought herself resigned to loneliness, had been given the same gift. They had saved each other. They had chosen each other. And in doing so, they had built something beautiful and lasting that would echo through generations. Children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who existed because a young woman once refused to let a stranger freeze to death in the snow. Families and ranches and lives built on the foundation of that one desperate week, when love first bloomed in the midst of a Colorado blizzard. In Las Animas, people still tell the story. The old-timers share it with newcomers, and parents tell it to their children as an example of what real love looks like. The Stanton Ranch still stands, now run by Amanda's great-great-grandchildren, who work the land with the same care and respect their ancestors taught. And on cold winter nights when blizzards sweep down from the mountains and snow piles high in the streets, people in Las Animas remember Amanda and Kenneth. They remember that sometimes the worst storms bring the greatest blessings, that sometimes the act of saving someone else saves you right back. That love, real love, is worth fighting for with everything you have. The boarding house where Amanda once worked is long gone, torn down decades ago to make room for progress. But the spot where it stood is marked with a plaque that reads, "On this site in December 1883, Amanda Keller saved the life of Kenneth Stanton during the Great Blizzard." Their love story became a testament to courage, compassion, and the enduring power of choosing each other every day. May their example inspire us all. Every year on the anniversary of the blizzard, the Stanton family gathers at the ranch for a reunion. They come from all over Colorado, Montana, Texas, California, drawn back by the pull of their heritage. They eat together and dance together and share stories about Amanda and Kenneth, keeping the memory alive for the next generation. And every year, the youngest children ask the same questions. Were they really in love? Did she really save him? Was it really the best love story ever? And every year the answer is the same. Yes, yes, and yes, because Amanda Keller and Kenneth Stanton's love story was not a fairy tale. It was real, messy, hard, and absolutely beautiful. It was built on a foundation of one woman's refusal to give up, one man's choice to keep fighting, and 42 years of waking up every morning and choosing each other all over again. That is what made it great. Not the drama of the blizzard week, though that was certainly dramatic. Not the romance of his proposal by the river or their wedding or any single moment, but the accumulation of all the moments, All the days and years of loving each other through good times and bad, through sickness and health, through every challenge and triumph and ordinary Tuesday afternoon. They had lived their wedding vows before they ever spoke them. They had chosen each other when it mattered most, when Kenneth was dying, and Amanda had every reason to walk away but did not. And that choice, made during the coldest week of winter in 1883, had blossomed into a love that warmed everyone it touched. As the sun sets over the Colorado prairie, casting long shadows across the Stanton ranch, you can almost see them. A young woman with determined gray eyes, dragging a stranger through the snow because it was the right thing to do. A cowboy with brown eyes opening for the first time after a week of fever, seeing an angel and asking her to stay. Two people finding each other in the midst of a blizzard and building a love that would outlast any storm. Their bodies rest in the Las Animas cemetery, side by side under the cottonwood tree. But their love, that fierce, beautiful, stubborn love, lives on in every Stanton who walks the earth. In every act of kindness, every refusal to give up, every choice to fight for something worth fighting for. Amanda Keller saved Kenneth Stanton's life during a blizzard week in December 1883. Kenneth woke and asked her to stay always. She said yes, and they built a life together that would echo through generations, a testament to the power of love, compassion, and the simple choice to never give up on someone who needs you. And that, in the end, is all any love story really needs to be. Real, true, and worth fighting for. The wind whispers through the prairie grass, carrying their story forward into the future, where it will be told and retold as long as there are people who believe in the power of love to transform lives. Amanda and Kenneth's story reminds us that sometimes the darkest storms bring the brightest blessings, that sometimes the person you save ends up saving you right back, and that love, real enduring love, is built not in single dramatic moments but in the thousand small choices to stay, to fight, to choose each other every single day. Always.